Okay, hi everybody, and welcome to our second edition, but the first really recorded edition of Between the Guidelines. This is where we look at projects a little bit closer that have been made with standards and talk to the creators behind them. My name is Hamish Smythe. I'm one of the co-founders of Standards, and today I'm joined by, and apologies for butchering your name, Andrea, but you can tell us how to say it properly, but Andrea Trabucco-Campos. So hi, Andrea. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks so much, Hamish. You did fairly well, so that's good.
I don't want to try too hard. It's tough.
No, just go with it, and that's good. It's Andrea Trabucco-Campos. But lovely to be here. Thank you for having me.
There you go. Thank you for your time. So I just want to give a quick introduction for those who don't know Andrea. Andrea is an Italian Colombian graphic and type designer. Focused on identity, typography, research, and interaction design. He's currently creative director at Gretel in Brooklyn, a faculty of design at School of Visual Art, also in New York. Before that, he was this just goes on and on. Before that, creative director at Design Studio in New York. Even before that, associate partner at Pentagram, New York, which is actually where we met. And we were lucky enough to collaborate on the MasterCard rebrand, which launched in 2016 under our respective partners, Michael Beirut and Luke Heyman. So that's where Andrea and I met and got to work on a really great project together. And so he's gone on to do many more great projects, including this one, which was a rebrand for the Rhode Island School of Design. So fair to say Andrea is an accomplished designer. We're happy to have him with here. So did I miss anything there?
I'm sorry?
Did I miss anything there?
No. This was all great. Thank you so much for the introduction.
Good luck. Good start. All right. So we let's jump right in and chat about this project. I quickly add also, if you can hear honking, we're both in New York, so you're guaranteed to hear some background noises and sirens. So we're sorry about that. Maybe next time we'll have a studio or something like that. But if you don't know, RISD stands for the Rhode Island School of Design, founded in 1887. And it's one of the most prestigious, or perhaps the most prestigious design and art schools in the United States, if not the world. And I was, before we did this interview, I was thinking, it occurred to me that that's sort of a dream project as a designer, but also kind of a nightmare as well, a little bit intimidating. Am I right? How did you feel about it?
Yeah. I mean, definitely you can feel the weight of 150 years of design and art education, like bearing on you, and our whole studio at Gretel. Like, I think the task was definitely one of the most exciting kind of RFPs we had received, and we put ourselves in it. Just as a studio, as you know, the same as Order or Pentagram, we usually don't pitch, we don't sort of do spec work. So it was true here, but there's always with the strategy team, like an intent to lay out a plan and a thorough understanding of what the organization is. And in this case, sort of the long history and the sort of future of RISD during that proposal. So we really could feel the weight of, some of the illustrious, like, kind of alumni looking in the project, and also, just bearing the fact that this is like the top institution with Parsons in the United States and considered the third best in the world. Just a great responsibility. Yeah.
And a notoriously non-judgy group of clients, designers. So, yeah. So can you tell us a bit about, quickly tell us a bit about Gretel and the team that you work on, and, how big is the team, and how big was the team working on this project specifically?
Yeah, it ebbs and flows depending on projects. So Gretel takes on a number of size projects. There's obviously your corporate rebrands, at the scale of PayPal, that involve large number of sort of both strategists, designers, writers, and PMs. I think roughly, to just get a mental map of the studio, we have operations, which includes people that help run the studio, as well as project managers. And then we have the strategy team, which is really an incredible group of thinkers that can apply that thinking, that sort of research-based understanding to creative tasks, and that kind of help us build worlds. And then there's the design team that includes the motion team. And historically, Gretel is a studio that comes from a motion background. It's still true in the DNA. It's in the way that identity is approached. It's fluid, flexible. But obviously the heavy sort of lift in design now happens within the brand identity designers, of which I'm the creative director. And then there's today 4 associate creative directors, and then a number of designers at all levels, all the way down to interns.
So smaller teams, broken up into smaller teams, or?
Exactly. So the studio right now is under 30 people. So it's really just a medium-sized boutique kind of studio, but that doesn't.
Still pretty big. Yeah, that's 30 people. For a.
And what that allows is for if we have projects that are of a larger scale, the teams will be larger. There's somewhere around 10. If we have something like RISD that has a number of sort of reasons why we would keep the team a little leaner, we only had 3 designers, including myself, and but an intern kind of helping at key moments, and then a strategist who also had support from a junior strategist, and then the PM. And really, that was the core team. So we're talking about 5-6 people for something that was quite complex as a brief. I think, just to give a sense of that brief, the way we shaped the project in collaboration with RISD, both the brand team and then the board and president at the time, Roseanne Samerson, we shaped it so that the community would be involved at every moment, so that this would be a fully transparent, fully open kind of approach of building the identity.
And that was a big part of the actual guidelines in the end, right? Documenting that phase.
Exactly. That is the final step in delivering sort of. And I wish actually that we had access to standards earlier on, because we built a lot of the community platform and sort of the way we shared presentations on a different platform. And it's been great working with the tools and sort of collaborating with you guys to evolve them.
We're working on a time machine currently, so shouldn't be long. So here's the Sirens, New York. So the background there is really interesting. And about the team, but can you tell us sort of why? I mean, I know it'll be from your point of view, but why RISD chose to do this? Why did they want to rebrand?
So historically, they've had a fraught relationship with brand as a larger sort of idea. Brand is something that stems from commerce. Commerce is something that's driven by capitalism and not by art or sort of design endeavors. And I think, at large, there has been obviously a brand. There's been a series of logos, somewhat of a system that was established, I think, in the 90s, in its latest iteration. But it never was codified to the point where it was flexible and usable across the whole organization.
And famously a logo that has been around since the beginning. Is that correct, or nearly?
In the 40s, one of the sort of professors who was a stone carver from the John Stevens sort of shop in Rhode Island, was asked to sort of come up with calligraphic insignia to put on the sort of all the documents that either you'd get as a diploma or you'd get an application. And so he
So
created.
that's why it's a seal. Yeah. Okay,
Exactly.
cool.
So
Right.
he created what now is the seal that we've made into the logo.
Yep.
And yeah, but that's historically has been around since the 40s, and it's the only object that remained unchanged since then. Everything else has changed. There was really no central sort of understanding of what the brand identity was for RISD. There were some things that were in use, like Gotham, for instance, as a typeface, but it wasn't. It was just when we did an audit of the entire organization, we just found every bit of the institution, every entity had come up with their own identity, and it was a way to express, themselves through logos and through color.
And that's not uncommon in any sort of company that we encounter, often rebranding, right? But it's perhaps ironic that an art and design school was so disorganized, or maybe it's actually makes perfect sense because they all wanted to have their own identity. So
exactly, the focus is not on establishing the brand for RISD, is in the work and the thinking that is produced by the sort of institution as an educational entity. And like, because there's that emphasis on the work, it sort of shifts the emphasis away from commerce and from brand. And what's happening today, though, is that the brand is the thing that punches through hundreds of other institutions around the world that can reach any one student at any time. And institutions can be a broad term that can include also like YouTube. Like kids these days are learning how to design and learning how to do art through non-conventional ways. And how does an institution that has 150 years of existing and really a great pedagogy and overall a great understanding of how to raise minds in these fields, like how do they punch through the noise and speak to them about brand and what we do, create sort of formalizing an identity, making it flexible enough? Like that's the way to kind of give a bridge for people to enter.
It's such a challenging, interesting and challenging problem, a unique kind of problem to solve. So we could talk for ages about this, but maybe we should look at get our faces off the screen and look at some graphic design. So do you want to take us maybe through the design process, or talk to us about how you went about tackling this whole thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll share my screen and we can get into it. I think the first thing to understand is we had 2 rounds of this, and one round, which I'm going to be showing, is actually something that no one except the RISD team saw. So this is kind of exclusive content, and I hope no one gets upset by this. But
you saw it here first, yeah.
There's nothing to hide here. So, we started with a sort of a traditional take on online guidelines, which is a replication of what we would do as a PDF or a keynote. So it's a very thorough way of kind of documenting the identity. You start with an introduction and you get into it, and then you have sort of a table of contents that allows you to access things like strategy, design, and then applications. And each one of these leads to a very thorough kind of breakdown of each piece that we presented. And it's almost a one-to-one with the process. There's not been a digestion or a synthesis beyond what we presented and got approved by the sort of the school. And the idea is that these are tools that are meant to be used. They're not supposed to present the larger ideas. They're not supposed to convince anyone or onboard anyone beyond sort of this initial introduction. They're mostly supposed to be used as like, okay, here's the logo, here are the colors that are allowed, here's the clear space, and so on. And so it's actually meant as a tool. So this was the first iteration that we did. For those with keen eyesight, this is the typeface we cut internally. And then during that period in which we were working on the guidelines, Ryan Bugden was working on the custom version.
RISD alumni, correct?
Exactly. RISD alumni who we commissioned to draw the complete to incomplete sans and serif, really complete to incomplete serif.
Can I just ask a question? And I just want to make sure people realize that we're looking at not the final version of the identity design here, but pretty close to the final. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And we're looking at your layouts for what the guidelines were going to look like. So we're not looking at the identity design, process essentially. This is sort of when it was near complete, or you had a direction approved essentially.
Exactly. This is at the very tail end of the project. The direction has been approved, the type has been approved, the type concept, and the sort of type has been commissioned. So we, at this point in time, I'm sort of parallel tracking with Ryan, and as a studio, we're looking over his work, and then we are just making sure that the guidelines contain all of the pieces for the identity. So the identity has been signed off.
Yeah. And you did for those interested, Armin Vitt at Brand New, you did a podcast. I forget what their podcast is called.
The follow-up.
That's right. You can check that out where they talk about the identity design process itself.
Exactly. And so what you can see here is we have things like signage that are very well documented, or most notoriously, sort of things like the way layouts work across different orbits. And the orbits, we organize the entire institution and its sub-branches in a way in which the identity kind of flexes throughout. So this was very specific. In order to understand this document, this is meant for designers, for people that are sort of harboring the brand and making sure that they're guiding it forward. They're not meant for anyone at the school to sort of understand in broad strokes what identity is about. You can understand that in the first chapters, but not in the inner chapter. So from here, there was a period of pause, I think, during the winter break, and then feedback came back from the great team at RISD, specifically Kirsten Marcella and Hui Vu, who gave us great kind of feedback. And really their prompt was like, hey, we love this, but this is way too nitty gritty. We need something that is a bit higher level. And so we went back and over a period of time, just prepared an outline. And this is the way it looks at first. I mean, this is just my way of working, but it's sort of purely broken out, and each one of these will then lead into full pages with full content. And so we shifted the entire paradigm. It's not anymore a guidelines. It's more a sort of introduction to the identity, its principles, and ways to kind of understand how to operate within it. So it shifts even the titles of the pages. It's not anymore typography, but layout. It goes, okay, just broad introduction to the idea, the core idea of the school, question to create to question. And then it moves into how we sound, how we look, how we're organized. And you see it here blocked out. And so from here, then there's a little bit of interpolation, pieces that are taken from different areas. There's a gutting that happened of the guidelines. And all of this has been in Figma. It allows us to work pretty fluidly. And then, there's an up-resing of each one of these. So as you see, as the weeks go by, there's more and more pages. And then all of a sudden you have something like that rough block out now looking like a design.
Starting to emerge. Yep.
Yeah. And so then we have the strategist, Kasha Gala, it was great. It was behind a lot of the strategic work, really fantastic mind in our team. And Gretel, she's a strategy director. She was helping write pieces of this and, just sort of bring the actual content to life as well.
Really cool approach. Yeah. I mean, so you really took it from a more traditional guidelines, which was, like tons of grid layouts and detailed graphics and color specs and things. And it's evolved more into a hub, I guess, or a learning center that's a bad term for it, but it's a really, I think, a fantastic approach. And it makes, I think, what we're trying to do with standards is move guidelines forward. And I think we were excited to talk to you because we thought this was one of the examples that really does that. It's taking sort of the idea of guidelines a little bit away from the traditional sort of thing that we see, which is a lot of it is still based on guidelines from the 60s.
Yeah.
And so, of course, you've still got that stuff in here, and you need some of those general things. But I think it's a great example where you've got, all of this sort of who we are, how we speak, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that paradigm shift is the biggest one. It's sort of giving enough context for somebody to understand the specifics of the identity, but not overwhelm them with detail.
Yeah.
Because again, it's meant for the entire community, and it's meant to solve this one critical piece that we were talking about before, which is there was a lot of split identities, sub-identities within RISD.
Yeah.
And the project is to bring the entire community together, operating within the realms of the flexible identity, but together. And so to have everyone understand and be on the same program, a document like this is super important. And it's also really important that it was built in a way in which it can be evolved. So, praising obviously sort of the standards, the team, like just the idea that you can hand this off, which we did, to the RISD team, and they can keep on pushing sort of the content, the actual images, things as they are produced, is massively important. It's just as important as setting it up at first.
Yes, and they have been updating it. We've seen, which is amazing. And yeah, I mean that's where we think guidelines should be moving is brands need to evolve constantly today. So being able to update them is key. I know a big part of this was having, doing it in this fashion made you or allowed you to sort of present the work or have the work accepted, I guess is the right word, to the community. That was a big part of it, right? Was sort of not having this new identity to a group of designers and artists sort of shoved down their throat, but actually introduced and really spelled out that there was a process, a thorough process behind this. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's fair to say. I think there's a piece that's not here that, again, we built on a different platform, but that took everyone along the process of building the identity from the very get-go. From the moment we did discovery and research, we produced a findings document, a research report, and then that led into both strategic sort of directions and then design directions. And so basically around 10 presentations are mapped out on a website that everyone can still access. And it's if you go to Gretel NY.com, like there's a link through RISD to that platform. And because it's just also allows you to see what kinds of, like how the process works for an identity of this type. And
yeah.
But yeah, this particular thing that we're looking at is the end product of all of that process. So it needs to also reflect that transparency. It needs to also reflect that inclusion. And
yeah,
it was really important that it was accessible to everyone, not just as a tool, like as a website you can go, but information wise, it's accessible. It's understandable. Like you don't need, as you see notes here, like no jargon, like that really was things that we were like, as we were writing, we're like, no jargon. We don't want brand speak. We don't want any of that. It was really, really important, both at the linguistic level, but also at the structural level to kind of reflect that.
So it's amazing. And I saw that the research, you showed me that at one point, because we'd been working on the standards. Well, you'd been working with standards with us from an early stage, and actually were able to help shape a lot of the product, which was fantastic. And thank you for that. And we'll put the link in the article, but it's an amazing collection of research and extremely thorough. And I'm glad I didn't have to do it. Is all I'll have to say. But could we see the final result. Should we go to that
Yeah,
web
let's do it.
page, the standard site? Anyone can see this is linked on our, well, we'll have it linked on this page here, but you can go to standards.site/examples, but the RISD itself is identity.risd.edu, I think.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm pulling that up, and we can see it.
This is a public site. That was a decision that did RISD want to make that decision? Did you sort of?
We talked about it for a while, and because the largest intent out of this project was to be open and transparent, then it just became clear that that we discussed like having it behind a wall that only RISD could access, like if you had a RISD.edu account.
Yeah.
We ended up deciding against that, and it was the vision of the team. Like our recommendation was obviously to do it this way. We think it's a really powerful way to kind of have other collaborators with RISD, and there's a ton. There's places like NASA that collaborates with them. They do programs together, to Hyundai, and like there's tons of different moving pieces, as well as like speakers and events and stuff that need assets. So it's a great hub for all of that. So we recommended that, but there are actual, there are real reasons why not to do it. One of them is if you don't have a proprietary typeface, which we do, then you might run into licensing issues with the number of hits, or even just having someone download that asset from your brand hub. So it's because we have certain stipulations with the typeface that Ryan Bogdan drew. It's really great. It made it, and he was all for it as well, just in the spirit of sort of sharing the thinking and the assets and the tools to everyone.
Yeah, no, it's great. And yeah, I mean, that's, we're seeing a lot of our customers posting public guidelines. And of course, there's a lot that you don't see, which are private, and you have a password. But I see the future of, well, I see two ways really. I think a lot of people are having both, where you have one sort of private, maybe more extensive, detailed guidelines, and then a public guidelines, because the public one can be a marketing or education tool. And so I think it's great to have both, or in this case, you've got everything out in the open. But also, you do have, I think, to get into the details, to go to resources and downloads, there you do go to a Notion page, right, where you do have to log in. So it is somewhat locked in, which makes sense. You can get some of the assets. Yeah.
You have access to some of them, and then others are sort of behind a either request form or just a login area.
Cool. So you just linked out to that from standards. That's cool. So can we look at some of the, so the first page is an intro. The second page, I mean, graphic design doesn't even happen until the fourth page, right? It's sort of what is RISD?
Yeah. So this just introduces broad ideas, which this is a summary of all the strategic work we did, which was based on about 500 interviews that we conducted, and sort of 1,000.
500. Wow.
Yeah, 500. So, but sort of with 500 people, sorry, 100. So there was 100 and something interviews in which we interviewed over 500.
Wow.
There's a lot of real meaty things that get boiled down to a few statements, and I mean that's part of the power of what we do, just being able to kind of recontextualize a lot of the findings and a lot of all of the things that we heard and making it digestible. So it really, this summarizes exactly what RISD is. And at the core, we found out that they're about making, but everyone thinks of design as a thing that solves things in the world. This solves problems. You make things to solve issues and to them, the solution is actually not the important thing. As an institution that forms or helps people sort of participate in art and design, they are really concerned with questioning, and questioning as the core tool, the criticality of that tool that serves to then create. And then as you make things, then you question them again, and that creates
It's such a great statement. Question to create to question. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. Let's get to the next section, how we sound. So this is about their verbal identity.
Exactly. So it all has to do with the voice of, like, how do we speak? How do we connect that layer that we were just talking about, the question to create, and sort of who we are as an institution, to how we sound. And so what are the things that we're trying to kind of solve for? And so the curiosity, the empowering others, and being proactive lead to certain sort of outcomes, inspiring people, supporting people, and involving people. And so all of this is kind of giving a few examples of, not this is old copy, but do it this way.
Cool.
With some, we had to devise certain things. I mean, this is like nerdery of, okay, but like there are certain ways in which we designed it in Figma that then didn't work out here. And it makes it actually kind of really interesting.
I think it looks great. Yeah.
Yeah, no, this was totally, and like, we were able to kind of bring in little typographic details throughout. So it actually shows, the flexibility of the tool. Like we're still able to do fairly complex layouts.
That's an interesting thing to talk about because, guidelines have been designed for most people still. Well, we did a survey of our customers, and 75% of people are still working or were working in PDFs, which we're trying to change. And we think that's because you can, have the ultimate design control that you want over things. And it's a change to design as a website, right? And that goes for designing any website, but especially designing guidelines as a website. There's a big sort of change in mindset, right? You're not designing slides, you're designing scrolling pages. So how did you think about that? And, or was it, or did it come naturally having, designed websites before?
Yeah. I mean, partly it does, if you face the task before of laying out large amounts of content on a website form, that you start learning how to solve it. But it is a very different task, right? Like instead of having this linear kind of one object per frame, you all of a sudden have this continuous scroll, and anybody can stop halfway or something like that. So
yeah, you have to think about pacing and
yeah, exactly. It's all the same challenges are there, right? Like, how do you create hierarchy across content? How do you make that visible? How do you make that flow in a way in which sort of you can see the cadence of the new section, and so on. So, but all of a sudden you're doing it in a vertical space where you can't really control the scroll. I can't control if somebody falls halfway through this. So you have to use, color and size, like our usual tools of graphic design, like in order to create that difference. And when here we actually use indentation, which was part of the whole identity, and sort of shifting a certain amount of columns to make sure that somebody understood that that's the intro.
Yep.
This is the subsection to that intro. And then we're shifting type. We're going from this incomplete serif to the sans.
That works really nice. And if you just scroll up a bit, you've also got this beautiful big animation of the changes to the seal, and that's a great thing that you can do here as well, where you can't easily do that in a PDF, and that sort of breaks up the page as well a little bit.
Absolutely, yeah.
Nicely.
That to me,
yeah.
More, I mean, it's doing a little job, right? It's explaining the shift, but jazzier way, let's say. But it also creates that rhythm, and it's basically, in magazine design or in book design, it would be like a big full bleed. Here, it's a full width.
Yeah. Book design came to mind as we've been talking about this. It almost feels like, or designing a site to me in a way feels more like book design, where you have to really think about the pacing more than a slide deck. And I think it's more fun to design. It's harder, I would say.
It's harder, and it's I think book design is definitely a good analog. The only thing that you still can control here is the scroll direction, and like it's really amazing. So then what we started doing is just hyperlinking as much as possible, so that things would be kind of as connected or interconnected, because that's the second And I would say maybe that's the difference between a PDF and a book and, you know, a
Mhm.
website. And that's a very obvious difference, but it's the hyperlinking, the idea that you can jump from one section to another in quite seamless way. And uh, that was
Yeah.
an
I mean, it's one of the great benefits of online guidelines, and it's not something we invented, obviously, but just having the ability to link around and navigate around the document is a big one. And
I'll, I'll say this about the tool. You know, we hadn't, as I mentioned, we're working with a prototype of a typeface that was not the final one. And when we finally had to switch it, it was actually pretty easy just because of the way Sanders is built. And so it was quite fantastic to just kind of plug in the other typefaces. And again, it's not something that is new to the web, right? But it is available in the tool pretty easily. And I think a big virtue of the entire platform is just that everything's centralized
yeah,
and
yeah,
the design system. So it's built for design systems, which makes it easy to work within it.
right, yeah. And what you're talking, for people who don't know, Andrea's talking about, they swapped out the typeface near the end, I think, but we basically have a feature where if you upload really any file that has the same file name, so typeface or image or whatever, it'll swap it out wherever it's been used. So it's really useful because often it happens, right? Late in a project, a color changes or typeface changes, and the way standard sets it up is with styles. So you have color styles that are used throughout. So if you need to update one color throughout, you can do that with one change. Likewise with type. So here we're getting into the organization.
Now this is getting much deeper. The goal of this page is how we're organized, meaning the brand architecture. But again, we're trying to use no jargon. So
Yeah.
brand architecture is not mentioned as a word. Yeah, there are 3 orbits. That means there's 3 sets of rules, depending on where you are. And as you sort of go from the center out, you have more flexibility. You start having flexibility in your own color. You can pick your own color. And then as you go further out, meaning like academic departments, you can really pick the combination of type that you want based on the palette. So it enables a certain amount of flexibility that goes all the way out to individual events, or either student
Really cool.
where complete freedom. We're not trying to sanction what should be used in terms of a color palette, type, or so on. The only thing that we've instituted is the sign-up, the endorsement to the organization.
That's great. Yeah, you can really see it, those orbits spread out, just on that page. I think it's fantastic. We haven't even talked about the identity overall. I mean, I think it looks stunning. The typeface is beautiful and references the carvings. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Generally, yeah.
Yeah, we looked at various models and
That's the before stuff at the top there, right? Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm going to, there's a special page, and I think it's actually, it will give you the most succinct version of what led us to the solution. It's just how we got here. And it contains our audit from early on, seeing how split everything was, both at the logo level and at the identity level. And then sort of what we were trying to build, in terms of what were the general goals for the identity, and then who the team was. Of course, we had the RISD team, and then we also have a great partner, a research agency named Rhode, based in London, who did these terrific ethnographies with all sorts of sort of emerging talent, but really focused on the BIPOC representation, and they really helped us get a really deep understanding of everything and everything as it comes to sort of a population that normally we wouldn't have much access to.
Yeah,
so
we'll link out to them. That I mean, you showed me some of the work in it. I think on that link we were talking about earlier, but they did some amazing work, research work. So we'll link out to them as well. But this is a great summary. And so then I love this page, the launch FAQ. I don't think I've seen anyone do this before, or maybe not do it this way, but can you go to that page?
Yes.
What does it say? A primer, take you through the basics of how the rollout. I can't read.
Of RISD's new identity, answer questions you might have about its rollout across various.
basically this is, I thought this was such a great idea because it takes people through what is an identity, and then how's this new identity going to roll out, and the pace at which is going to happen. You know, most identity rebrands don't happen overnight, right? There's sort of, I call it the ugly duckling phase, where you have maybe a mix of things happening. But this was aimed to sort of educate people on what was going to happen, right?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a really important page for anybody who's trying to get an understanding of, generally the identity, but to get more specific, like, is question to create the question, our tagline. Because, when you come up with sort of some type of idea that is verbalized in a certain way, people want to use it all over. This is true if you look at an identity like Airbnb's with belong anywhere. That belong anywhere, which is the strategic kind of coin, the sort of term, it was in use for a bit in campaigns, and that washes it out. The more you use a sentence, the more it gets washed out and diluted. So a Q&A about when you use this and what the intent behind it is really important. And so just explain in 3 simple sentences, like it's great. Things around the seal. So it varies, and it shows a degree, this speaks to exactly the point that you were making.
I love this. Yeah. This diagram.
How long will the transition to the new identity take, and sort of this picture of it forming? And we're halfway, and the team has done such an incredible job at RISD at like completing this picture and really pushing it through the entire institution.
Yeah.
And onboarding. It's a lot. It's a lot of behaviors that have been developed over decades that are now being sort of guided in a different direction, in a way in which it centralizes everything. And so it's also showing examples of new things.
Yep. And have you been up there recently? Have they put in new signage and things like that? Is it happening?
Yeah, definitely. Not recently as of the last 6 months, but before that we went, and there was quite a few things kind of being put up. Hoping to go back and perhaps lecture at one of the professors there, one of the graphic design classes. But it's really remarkable, like the way they've actually managed to kind of bring these tools into their everyday. And there's still a lot more to happen. There's a lot of signage that's happening. They're collaborating with a signage company that's sort of taken our notional designs and obviously done the entire sort of process of making them real, which is
that's a whole job in itself. Yeah.
It's a massive job in itself. And they've done like really, really great work. But we've seen stuff like the truck. There's these sort of security vans that they have that almost look like police vans. And we did, I don't have it here, but it's with big arrows. We kind of just redesigned them, which was an awesome, fun kind of application to do. And they actually made those, and they're called the Defender of the Arts. So you're able to like typeset that and then use it's like massive.
I love that. For some reason, designers love putting stuff on trucks. That's just
maybe, I don't know. Yeah. But it was a lot of fun, and so you can see a lot of things here, and it's really great. I mean, they've put a lot of care and a lot of attention into every single part. They've been really RISD, and the brand team was an exceptional partner. And I just want to mention the entire team at Gretel, just to kind of, I like to be transparent about all of these things. And
for sure, this is not just you. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. It's not just me. It's a great team in design. Dylan Mulvaney, Leah Liu, alongside myself, design. All the directions and it sort of got us to where we were. Ryan Moore, the ECD at Gretel, was also involved in a lot of the conversations. Ryan Bugden, as I mentioned, in the type design. And then Kasha Gala, like an incredible thinker and sort of strategist, who's a strategy director. And then Carrie Greiner, who was the project manager on our end, who, again, seasoned, super talented person who could steer and help us kind of navigate all of this. So yeah, that in a nutshell is the team. They're obviously moving, like interns and whatnot, who were really great and contributed all along the way. But the stable team from get-go was this.
Takes an army. Yep. Yeah. Well, congratulations. It's a monumental project, I think, and not just looks great, but is thoroughly, thought through, and I think it's one of the best pieces, that's come out recently in the branding world, our small little world. So congratulations. And I mean, lastly, how did it land? What's the
Well,
reception been like?
the reception was really, I mean, one piece we didn't get into, but the follow-up has a fairly detailed account of this. It's
Yeah.
certain inflection moment in sharing this to the community. There were opinions in the community. It actually was pretty well received. We had 4 directions in the running, and the community all sort of responded to one. And the issue became that the board and sort of leadership was responding to a different one. And so we had to resolve. And that ultimately ended up leading us to this solution, the complete to incomplete typeface, the idea of question to create interpreted through a typographic signature. And I think the reception from that has been one that the community has embraced. As far as we've heard, there's really just, there's a real deep love for the institution. And I think that, is like one of the greatest things that we can do as designers is amplify others and, make sure that our work is speaking truly to them and about them, and they can see themselves through it. And I think a lot of the roots for both the evolution of the seal and the type itself came from them and came from the actual history. And it feels in tune with Providence, Rhode Island, which is a historic place, but it also points to the future, both through the color and the layouts and, the actual work that's being showcased and, the way we celebrate sort of the production of the school. So I think overall has been pretty good. The reception internally, which is the one that matters to us, the reception externally also has been fairly well. We just won a couple of awards, and it's all right. As you know, that's all variable, and it doesn't really.
That's great. Congrats.
But it's always good. Yeah,
it's always good. It's important for new business and all that, and people's resumes. So, no shame in awards. And so, lastly, a kind of a broader question, but and then we're way over time here. If you're still listening, congratulations. But
you're a true nerd.
Yeah, true nerd. Absolutely. The broader question about guidelines and you've designed probably maybe hundreds of guidelines for of varying sizes, I'm sure, but at least dozens and dozens. But how do you see them, or how have they evolved from the beginning of your career? And you're quite young, but you're not looking at the binders from the 60s or anything, but how have you seen them evolved, and how do you see guidelines evolving in the future, if you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, I do. I mean, from my limited historical practice, I would say, because obviously we're both student of guidelines and appreciate the whole history, especially the ones that you guys have brought back in the facsimiles, and also things like unit editions, bringing back tons and making those accessible to a ton of people. But I think it's evolved from almost, this project traces that history in a way, from a tool that is meant to be used in reproduction to a tool that is meant to educate and help someone understand and operate within the frame of mind of the new identity. So it's less mechanics, sort of assembly, like an IKEA assembly kit, and more a manifesto and more a ethos and sort of a general notion of how the tools work. Because the understanding today is, I think the core difference is that we have the tools available elsewhere. So if I need to make a sign, I can go to the files that are digitally available to me, and I can make that sign based on certain specs. And I don't need to use the standards manual to measure out the thing and produce an reproduction. None of that is needed anymore. So just the entire field has changed. It has changed the way these guidelines are. And when we practice them in the old ways, there's a beauty to it, right? There's a precision, a craft to it.
A simplicity.
Simplicity as well. But there's also a lack of alignment with where we are today as practitioners. And there's this old joke. I want to ascribe it to Paul Scher, but maybe I hope this is right. It's just, a good designer will look at guidelines and quickly ignore them. And a bad designer will look at guidelines and also ignore them because they're just not designing them well. And like, it's this sort of trope that is kind of true. Like the guidelines help you help you solve certain issues at certain moments. But overall, if you're a good designer, you kind of get what's going on, and you might refer to them like in and out really quickly. You'll have templates, you'll have Figma tools. Nowadays, like we have everything centralized in a certain way. We deliver the entire design system in Figma in ways in which things were linked, and there's very little to kind of learn other than do. Like you actually are making much more than learning how to make. And so because of that shift, I think it's shifted the relationship we have towards guidelines. And I think more and more this idea of capturing the ethos, the story, and then some of the tools, a broad overview, is really important. But it's also really hard. It was a hard shift to make. To synthesize it.
Yeah. Well said. I think we're at Standards Out. We have a similar, feeling that we're, guidelines is maybe a better word for what they are now. In the past, there were very much instruction manuals. Like you said, IKEA manuals, and do this, do not do that, or you will, there will be repercussions, and you'll get in trouble if you use the wrong size. Nowadays, it's more about communicating, I think, a brand's ethos, and it depends on the brand, but it's less about those. In some cases, less about that instructional material, and it's more about communicating the spirit of the brand, perhaps. So, you said it better than me.
With one more, and probably we could close on this. Maybe
we should shut up.
We should let the listener, whoever the two people that are still like that. But if they hear this is pretty, I think, maybe a good future. With the introduction of AI, there's something else that's going to happen, which the tools themselves and the way we describe the identities themselves will shift as well. And so it might push us even loftier than before, where purely we're sort of trying to describe the things and not actually make the tools to make the things, and communicate how those tools work and what principles matter. And so it's going to be an interesting future. I'm not exactly sure where that takes us, but
no one is. I think that's a good place to end, and I think we should obviously we need to do another whole hour on just that or something. So Andrea, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. This was fascinating for me, even though I know quite a lot about it already. So hopefully anyone out there, the two people listening, got something out of it too.
Shout out to you guys. But thank you so much, and also thank you for, I think, both the dedication to the field. I think as a group, both order standards, manual standards, like you guys keep on advancing it, and we all respect it and see it. And I think the thoroughness of the tool itself is phenomenal. I mean, I can't speak highly enough, and I think it's well beyond guidelines builder. It is really a thoughtful CMS for people that care about type, grid, and just good interactions. And I think I'm just excited to, keep our collaboration going and keep on evolving and see where we take it. So
thank you very much. It checks in the mail. But yeah, the team's worked very hard to make a dedicated tool for guidelines, which we think hasn't been appreciated. No one's really got the recipe right. So I'm glad you're enjoying it. All right, let's leave it at that. Thank you so much, Andrea.
Thank you, guys.
And we will talk to you again soon. Thank you.